Giant Size X-Men #1. So the story starts in Winseldorf, Germany. The book describes the town as a quiet town, but the townspeople are literally chucking flaming crap at Kurt Wagner. They're trying to kill him. They think he's a monster. They think he's a demon. He's trying to get away from them, thinking, what have I done to deserve this? And he knows what he looks like, but he knows that he's a good person too. Anyway, you can only be pushed so hard before you decide to fight back. So he jumps off the roof of this building and tries to fight them back, but they end up whooping his ass. He's way outnumbered by these townspeople. They're holding him down. One guy's got a wooden stake. He's about to plunge it through his heart, and that's when the whole crowd freezes. And Kurt Wagner's like, what the hell's going on? You know, why is everybody just stopped moving all of a sudden? And it's because Professor X is here. He's frozen everybody with his mental powers, and he's here to talk to Kurt Wagner about how he's got a school for mutants and how he can come with him and he'll train him how to use his powers. And Kurt Wagner's like, can you make me normal? And Professor X is like, I don't know about all that, but I can make you whole. I can make you yourself. And he's like, all right, let's go. Pivot to Quebec, Canada, where Wolverine is at this military installation, and he's got an appointment to meet with some bigwig. Little does he know the bigwig is Charles Xavier, who's on a hunt to go collect mutants. Now, in order to convince Wolverine to come with them, Professor X is like, oh yeah, you can come work for me, and I'll get you out from under all the red tape and rigmarole of working for the government, and you won't have to deal with these guys anymore. And he's like, all right, yeah, I'm down for that. But the government guys were not very happy about that. So they got into it, but I mean, who's going to win, right? Like Wolverine versus some government guy. So Wolverine basically just walks out the door and goes with Charles Xavier because he can. Professor X's next stop is to go pick up Banshee. They already know each other, so he basically tells him the real deal, and then Banshee's like, alright, I'll come with you. Next, he goes to Kenya to go pick up Storm. I don't know how he knows she's there, but the people of Kenya are worshipping her. They think she's like a weather goddess or a rain goddess or some kind of goddess. So they're worshipping her and sacrificing animals in her name, and she's making it rain whenever they need it to, literally. And that's when Professor X shows up, and he's like, girl, I don't know why you're playing with these people. You know you're not a goddess. We both know you're a mutant. And why don't you come with me where you can actually put your abilities to good use rather than just chilling waiting for somebody to ask you to make it rain. And she's like, yeah, okay, you seem sincere, I'll come with you. In Japan, Professor X meets up with Shiro Yoshida. Professor X barely gets a sentence out before Shiro is like, bomb, let's go, I'm ready to go, because he's just ready to fight. This man has a hot temper, he's always ready to go, and he's ready to show off he's got a big ego, so he just jumped in without even being asked to, really. Peter Rasputin is next on Professor X's list, so he travels to Russia just in time to catch Peter Rasputin doing something heroic. He's saving his little sister from a runaway tractor, and that's when Professor X comes up, and he's like, yo, you want to come with me to America? And what's kind of funny about this one is that Peter Rasputin is so communist and Russian that he's like, I can't just leave. I don't have autonomy over myself or my powers or what I choose to do. And Professor X like, yes, the fuck you do. Like, let's go to America. Last on the list is John Proudstar. Professor X and him have a very heated exchange. Professor X comes to him and he's like, I'm here to give you purpose so you can bring pride back to your people. And John Proudstar's like, fuck you, white man. Then Professor X calls him and all his people frightened little children. Like, he's calling native people frightened little children. And John Proudstar's like, no, you ain't gonna call me and my people that, and I'm not gonna be that, so I'm gonna prove you wrong by coming with you. It's really weird. But now Xavier has his team. He gave them uniforms Reed Richards made them, but now he has to reveal to them the truth of why he gathered them all together. And now Sunfire is popping off, and he demands to know why they were all brought here today, even though he totally volunteered for this mission without even being asked to come, technically. So, I mean, that's just how he is. In walks Scott Summers, Cyclops, the leader of the X-Men. He's going to explain everything. He takes them to Cerebro and tells the new team how the original X-Men members were in Cerebro and they detected a new mutant on this island of Krakoa, and they flew there, and something happened to all of the X-Men except for him. He just kind of got knocked out, and when he woke up, he was back on the ship. It was on autopilot. It drove him back home, and his powers weren't working. So the real reason Xavier put a new X-Men team together is to go save the old X-Men team. Sunfire throws a fit. He says he's not coming, and then he totally comes anyway. He just likes to fucking throw fits for no reason. So Cyclops' plan is to split up the X-Men. Teams of 2, north, south, east, and west. They're going to cover the island, and they're going to find the original team. Naturally, each team gets attacked by a creature of the island or the island itself, and they all get cornered into the center of the island where this temple is. This is the first opportunity the team gets to use their powers all together to take down this wall and bust their way into the temple. And it works. They make their way in and they find the original team. They're all strangled up by the vines of the island. So they carry out Angel, Lorna Dane, Havoc, Iceman, and Jean. And Angel wakes up to ask why. Why did you guys come back for us? Which is kind of a confusing question until Angel says, you fools, don't you understand? This was a trap. It wanted you to come back. There's no mutant on this island. The island is the mutant. Krakoa is alive and it's been feeding on the X-Men's powers. That's why Scott temporarily lost his powers and he got it back once he was away from the island. The X-Men's attacks seemingly have no effect on Krakoa. That's when Professor X pops into Scott's brain telepathically and tells him he has a plan. Professor X is going to fight Krakoa mentally, while Scott instructs the rest of the X-Men on exactly what to do. Storm soars into the heavens and creates a lightning storm, and she transmits those energies directly down to Lorna Dane. This recharges the powers that have been sucked from Lorna while she's been on the island, but she's basically trying to harness being electrocuted, and Havoc, aka Alex, aka Cyclops' brother, is not about this plan. He's really worried that Lorna's going to hurt herself. But Cyclops is the leader, so everybody has to do what he says. Professor X is fighting this battle in his mind, but the island is getting stronger because of all the rain. So Professor X actually passes out and is not able to help them anymore. Lorna uses her supercharged powers to basically break the magnetic poles of the Earth and relieve this area of its gravity so that the island can literally just float away. So the X-Men head for the beach so they're not carried away with it, and Iceman makes them like an ice raft for them to ride on, while the Summers brothers use their powers to propel themselves away from the island. So this seems to be working. The island's floating away, but then the space that the island was taking up in the water is now empty, and it's kind of created a vacuum and a whirlpool. So Iceman has to make a little dome for them to live in while they're getting stuck underwater. So they get knocked around a bit in there until they pop back up to the surface, and they find that their jet has also fallen off the island and landed in the water, and it's floating on the surface of the water too, so they can all climb in there and fly home. And this issue ends with them realizing there aren't enough seats on this jet for 13 X-Men. We pick up where we left off with X-Men issue number 94. Professor Xavier calls a team meeting, and he wants to congratulate them on a job well done in Krakoa, and he wants to talk about the future. That's when Sunfire decides to talk about his own future and say that it won't be with the X-Men. He says that his duty is to his country and to his emperor, and he's really a dick about it. That's when Banshee decides that he's probably going to leave too. He's a lot older than the rest of the X-Men, and I think he just feels like he won't fit in. But Scott speaks up, and he convinces him to stay, and Professor Xavier's like, alright, well now that that's settled, let's actually talk about the future together. And that's when another surprise announcement is made. It seems that the original X-Men team feels like they don't want to do this anymore, and they kind of want to quit. This is shocking to Professor Xavier. Iceman, Marvel Girl, and Angel have been with the team since day one. Professor Xavier taught them how to use their powers, and they grew up in that mansion. But that's kind of exactly the point. They've grown up, they've got control of their powers, and they think it's time to go. For some reason, this sets off Wolverine, and him and Iceman get into it. I think he's got abandonment issues or something. Scott's brother Alex is leaving too, and he asks Scott, are you coming with us? The question of whether to stay or go keeps Scott awake all night. But by morning, he realizes that he still doesn't have control of his powers. Also, as leader of the X-Men, I think he gets a lot of purpose from being here and doing this job. This means he has to say goodbye to Jean Grey, and they're in love with each other. They aren't breaking up, but they're going to try to do a long distance thing. The original X-Men say goodbye, and it's left to Scott to whip this new team into shape. So he takes them to the danger room and challenges them to walk across the room. The room is empty, so they're pretty confused by this. Thunderbird tries it, and the room kicks his ass. And so it begins. They spend 6 hours a day, 5 days a week in this room that adapts to their powers and attacks them, and they practice being a team. At one point, Thunderbird burns his leg, and the guys come to his aid, and Thunderbird is too proud to accept their help. He's got issues with authority figures, so him and Cyclops get into it, and then Professor Xavier does that creepy thing where he pops into people's head, and he breaks it up. Then, interestingly, we see a moment where John Proudstar is, reflecting internally, and he feels bad about it. And he's like, way to go, hotshot. Looks like you've blown another chance for yourself. Maybe the last one. So he obviously knows he's got an attitude problem, but he just can't keep it in check. Maybe being a part of a team will help him learn how to talk to people. Scott's really upset about what happened between him and Thunderbird. He's the leader of the X-Men, and he takes his job really seriously. It's his job to make them into a team. Nightcrawler walks in to check on him because he knows he's upset, and Cyclops blames himself entirely for not being able to keep Thunderbird in line. Just then, Professor Xavier pops into their heads with his telepathy. He tells them that an emergency has come up and they all need to get to the briefing room now. Hank McCoy, aka Beast, is the one giving them the rundown. He used to be an X-Men, but he left the team to become an Avenger. The Avengers have their hands full right now, so they're asking the X-Men to help take care of this guy named Count Nefaria, who's actually fought the X-Men in the past. He's got this team of Animen, and they've managed to take over this base that's hidden in Valhalla Mountain that's stocked with nuclear missiles. Count Nefaria demands a ransom to not shoot off the missiles, and he must have sent this video out to the government or something. The government would have been the ones to contact the Avengers, but then the Avengers contact the X-Men. Scott tells Thunderbird that he's going to have to stay behind because he injured himself in the danger room, and Thunderbird pops the fuck off. Of course he does. He always has an attitude about everything, and Professor X decides that rather than have them stand here and argue, just let him go with. The X-Men pile into their jet, the Blackbird, with Cyclops as the pilot. Some government jets trail them from behind and ask who the hell they are. Cyclops says they've been sent by the Avengers. The General misunderstands and thinks they are the Avengers, and Cyclops says, no, we're the X-Men. Then the General's got some racist slurs to throw at them. Figures I might have known you mutie to show up with Nefaria around. I don't really trust you, mister, but right now I've got no choice. The General informs Cyclops that Nefaria in that building is really dangerous. He's got access to all these nuclear missiles and something called the Doomsmith system. He says the missiles will automatically fire and there's no power on Earth that can stop them, and that the X-Men only have 52 minutes to cancel the Doomsmith. The X-Men approach Valhalla, and Count Nefaria sees them on that monitor. He's very excited to get his revenge after the last time they met back in issue number 22 and 23. He ended up in prison, but he escaped. So he shoots off these missiles, and they're chasing the Blackbird. Just like that scene in the X-Men movie where Storm and Jean are piloting the Blackbird and they're trying to outrun these two missiles, that's exactly what's happening here. And just like they get hit in the movie, they get hit right here. Luckily, the Blackbird has a pod section that can detach, so the X-Men escape on that. And Nefaria goes apeshit. He is so upset. He cannot stand how many times he's tried to kill them and failed. So he tries another weapon that's in that building, which is the disruptor beam. Basically teleports the ship that they're in away from them and leaves them falling in the air to their doom.